Oh,
There we go. How's it going, buddy?
good, good. How are you?
Doing great, doing great. Let me just make sure we have this set up here.
Fuck
So,
yeah,
yeah,
dude. I was just at a coffee shop, and I like overheard somebody saying to another person, they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm in software," and I was like, "That's the funniest fucking thing you could say to someone." I reckon it's like I'm in software.
I'm
It's like, get me
inside
out
the
of here.
computer.
It's hot.
Stuck inside the computer. I'm with it. Anyways, well, first off, I want to thank you so much for doing this for me. I thought it was a lot of fun. Do you want to hop on the your webcam, or do you want me to just do this?
Yeah,
This
I'm
me?
naked though, but yeah,
Oh well, you know.
I'm turning it on now. No, I'm
There
just
we
joking.
go. Perfect. Okay, no worries, no worries. Let me just go ahead and add a little bit of a side by side cam here. And while I do that, why don't you tell everyone just a little bit about yourself? Because I'm sure most people here know who you are, but like what I'm hoping for is like what's a little bit of your background, like how did you get started with music, where are you from, like what are you currently doing, just kind of give us a little bit of like the Mr. Bill story while I get you showing up on here.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so I guess I started fucking around with music like on some really amateur level when I was young, like 5 years old or something. Um and that was just like, I don't know, banging on pots and pans and like had I think like a few shitty little Casio keyboards laying around the house, and I think my dad had a drum kit at some point, and like just a bunch of that shit. I was just messing around with music, and then I didn't really like do the music thing for most of my childhood life. I was mostly doing other stuff like I don't know, just being a kid. And then when I was like 13 or something, my mum got me a guitar, and then I started playing a ton of guitar, and then I don't know, from there I sort of started taking an interest to electronic music. And well, actually I was in metal bands for a long time. So like I basically was playing guitar in metal bands from the age of like maybe 15 to like maybe like 18 or 19. And then I did a couple of shows with some metal bands, and then I just got really sick of like having to herd like four people to band practice all the time, and
Yeah.
also I was kind of like, usually I was the one like writing most of the music anyway, and I was just doing all of that in GarageBand on my mum and dad's computer, which was just like, when computers were like not a thing that everybody had. It was just a thing that like, like your household had or whatever.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I was, we had like one computer in the living room, so like everyone would share that, and everyone would use it like through the day and shit, and then everyone would go to bed, and then I would just write music on GarageBand all night.
I feel
And
that. Nice. Like, well,
yeah,
I'm curious. What kind of metal were you doing? Like, was it like just kind of all sorts, or was there a specific subgenre of metal that you kind of lean towards?
I was mostly into like technical sort of stuff. So originally I was into stuff like Metallica and that kind of shit, and like Guns N' Roses and like that classic sort of like guitar rock stuff, because that's like the fun stuff to learn on guitar when you're just getting into guitar, I suppose, because it's like easy enough that you can play it, but it's like complicated enough that like you feel satisfied when you learn it or something. Um, so I was doing that a lot, and then after that I started getting into like really technical stuff. So at the time, it was like Veil of Maya and like I can't remember who else I was listening to at the time. But yeah, basically like more techie stuff, like Lamb of God, I suppose, like heavier stuff as well. I was super into them as well. Um, but yeah, basically after like my whole metal phase, I had a friend. His name was Frosty, and he was like, I was like the one in like our group that had a license, and he was like, "Oh man, can you drive me to this party? It's called a doof." And I
A
was
doof.
like,
Oh, I remember the story. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I was like, oh yeah, totally, I'll drive you to the doof. And then and then we got there and they were just playing psytrance, and I was kind of like, everyone was dancing weird, and like everyone kind of fucking smelt funny, and like everyone was clearly high on like acid and all of this kind of stuff. And I was just like, fuck, this is sort of uncomfortable. So I was pretty much like, I want to take whatever these people are having. I was like, it looks fun. So I ended up finding some acid, And then I took acid and listened to psytrance for like 30 hours straight. And then I was just like sold on psytrance. I was like, this is fucking awesome. It's basically just metal, but electronic. Like I liked the fact that it was like really technical and like really fucking well put together and like well mixed, and like all the parts were so tight. And it was like a lot of things that I really did enjoy about metal, but in electronic music. And then from there, I guess it sort of my taste snowballed a little bit, because I was like, I was into metal. I like psytrance, and then I found out about like Square Pusher, and then I found out about Venetian snares, and I was like, oh, this is like even more like metal-y, but it's fucking electronic and really sick. Um, so then I went down that whole rabbit hole of finding out about breakcore, and then I got super into the breakcore scene in Sydney, and I was going to like warehouse parties all the time. And then my mate Frosty was like into Ableton and Fruity Loops and shit, and I was still like using GarageBand, and I was kind of trying to figure out how to do all this shit in GarageBand, but it was really difficult. And then he showed me Fruity Loops, and I was like, "Oh, this is pretty cool." I didn't really gel with it too much. And then I had a few other friends using Fruity Loops at the time as well, and this was in maybe like 2005 or something. And then I had a few other friends that were using like Ableton, and Frosty was one of them, and he showed me Ableton, and I was like, "Fuck, this makes like so much more sense than like Fruity Loops."
Oh man, see,
So,
that's actually a pretty contentious opinion on here. One thing I've noticed is there is a bit of a disparity, we'll call it, between Twitch users who make music on FL and Twitch users who make music on Ableton. I have a feeling that the majority of the chat right now are Ableton users, but towards the end of the day, we tend to get a lot of FL users.
yeah.
Huh?
No, I was just saying, yeah. Somebody in the chat just asked, what version of Live?
Yeah.
I can actually here. Let me send you a screenshot.
Alrighty. Let's pull this up.
Hold on, let me go to my order history here. Or actually, it's not even in my order history. Let me.
I think it's actually kind of interesting that you found a connection between psytrance and metal, because I personally would have never considered like the connection there. But now that you kind of mentioned, I can hear the difference or the similarities in like the rhythms and definitely like in the technical sound design. Whoops, let me show off this real quick.
Yeah, so like yeah, that was my first Ableton license right there.
Nice.
At this point it's an NFR for some reason, but yeah, it's basically a version 4 was the version that I started out with Ableton.
Nice. So we got some Bitwig fans in the audience. Thank you to
Bitwig is sweet.
whoever followed. I missed that. But that's kind of big in your face. Awesome. Well, so kind of moving on from like your earlier time, like how did the evolution from like psytrance into breakcore evolve into kind of like this modern like glitch IDM, almost like bass music sound? Like I guess as a catch-all, because you've done like drum and bass stuff. I've seen you do like you've been working on a lot of dubstep lately, which is it's sounding fucking fire, dude. It's
Nice.
got some heaters. But like how did that happen? Like how did you move from like this very I guess I'm trying to find a polite way to describe the scene of psytrance into where you're at now? Like how did that evolution come about?
So yeah, I started trying to write psytrance when I was younger, and then I think from there I just I don't know, slowly took like little bits of that process and then started mashing them with like all the breakcore stuff that I really like. And then it eventually just basically became breakcore, but with psytrance sound, I guess.
For sure.
So kind of like cleaner breakcore, like better edited breakcore with like, because I feel like breakcore is so much about like the grit and the noise and like just all the fucking crazy distortion and all of that kind of stuff. And I feel like with psytrance it's about like everything having like tons of space, but the spectrum still being really full, and like all the sounds being super punchy, and like just everything being really perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like just a mix between those two things equals sort of what my sound ended up being.
For sure. That's really cool. Do you think that like because I remember you talked about like your time at SAE in Sydney. Like, do you think that actually influenced the way that you make music, or do you think it just affected the way that you approach like mixing and engineering your tracks?
Yeah, so I don't think Ableton really sorry, SAE. I don't think SAE really like they didn't have much electronic music stuff going on there at all. And in fact, like most of the lecturers that I had at SAE were kind of like electronic music is dumb. And it's like not a real style of music, and it's like, you know, super easy to make in comparison to like mixing a rock record. And like they had these really stupid fucking views that I just didn't agree with and still don't agree with at all. Um, so for me, SAE, a lot of it was like overcoming that kind of stuff, like trying to be like, my ideas aren't dumb, and I will pursue this, even though, and I think what SAE was really good at was just teaching me the fundamentals of stuff, like you know, like learning about shit like the harmonic series and like subtractive EQing versus additive EQing and how compressors work really well, and you know, live sound stuff, microphone placement, just all that kind of like basic sort of general audio theory kind of stuff. I think was what that was good for. And it taught me a little bit about mastering and a little bit about acoustics and that kind of stuff. But as far as electronic music goes, it didn't really teach me much at all. And honestly, I would say like if you're trying to do like electronic music and that's all you want to do, literally just go to like a school that teaches Ableton at this point, because there's so many of them and they're so good at this point. Like there's a really good one in Sydney called Live School. There's a really awesome one in Boulder called KMG. There's another one in Denver and Minneapolis called Slam Academy. Like there's just so many of these schools now. There's one in LA called Beat Lab. Um, there's just so many cool schools, and all they do is specialize in teaching electronic music in Ableton at this point. And if I was to like do it again and I was like back in that same position I was in, I mean, it's hard to say if I would have gotten like as good of an education as going to SE and getting like all of this really fundamental knowledge. But I probably would have just gone to an Ableton school at this point.
I can dig that. And kind of touching on that briefly, I don't want to go too deep into this because I would say this is more kind of like towards the end of the talk where I kind of want to talk about like the industry and kind of the business side of stuff. Like, what is your opinion on like total like music production schools like Icon or like Pyramid or like I think Dubspot is the big one that got in a lot of trouble like a couple years back. What do you feel about those ones that are trying to like will give you everything you need to know to make a career in electronic music? Do you think those are useful, or do you think that it's more of like a technical thing as well?
Um, Wait, so the question is like, do I think schools like Pyramid are useful?
Yeah, like, do you think that they are as useful as going to something that's more like Ableton focused, or going to SAE? Like you said, that an Ableton school is probably better than SAE for like making electronic music. But what about like these full like electronic music programs? I guess.
Oh, right. I mean, I don't know that much about them, but I know Pyramid is good. I've done a few talks at that school before, and yeah, I like the guys who run it. Dubspot as well. I've done a talk there, but I don't really know a ton about like the program and how the program operates. Basically, I think if you can go into like an electronic music program and you can come out of it knowing how like synthesis works, knowing how modular synthesis works, knowing like a bunch of like hardware stuff, and then also knowing stuff in the box, like knowing how, you know, knowing that a flanger or a phaser is a comb filter, knowing you still need to know how compressors work, still need to know how EQs work, and you still need to know how to like edit, and you need to know how to do like remixes and how to warp stuff and automation and like all of these like kind of technical things, but also with like a bit of exterior knowledge on like audio theory and also like hardware. I think if it can kind of like cover all of those things, then it's a good course. And also props if it can also cover some shit like Max for Live too, which I think Dubspot was covering in one of their courses. But
Oh, for sure, for sure. I can dig that. I mean, circling back around to like to your music, Like, would you say that your music now is kind of like you mentioned, like just a synthesis of everything you were doing before, or would you say that like there was any big periods of like huge shifts in your style or your sound, either because you learned something, because you discovered some new music, or you got like some new hardware or software, or whatever? Like, is that a part of it, or is it just kind of like you naturally evolve from where you first started making music to where you are now?
Oh, no, not at all. I feel like I went from being like kind of shit to being like really good in the span of like a few months actually.
Oh,
And
interesting.
I don't know exactly what that shift was, but it was about the time that I started going to SAE actually. And I think it wasn't necessarily like SAE in particular that was the reason why I got better quick. I think it was more so just like having people reaffirm certain things. Like when you like start writing music and you kind of like, oh, I don't know if I'm doing this right, and I don't know if like, this is the right decision to make mix wise, and I don't and you get like kind of all of those doubts. I think going to SAE kind of like reaffirmed some shit in my head where they were just like, oh, if it sounds good, it is good kind of thing.
Definitely.
And
Yeah.
then I think that helped a lot. And then within a few months, I just kind of like took that approach, and I was like, oh, fuck it, if it sounds fine, it's fine. And I also had like some better listening environments when I was there too. Like they had some nice studios with some good speakers, so I was actually able to start hearing properly what I was doing. Because before that, I was just writing like in some shitty speakers at my parents' house, and also like shitty like ear pods and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the humble beginnings that a lot of electronic music producers go through. What are you working on right now? Like, do you have anything kind of currently in the works that like you're about to release, or anything that you want to share? I know you said on Instagram you have an EP coming out. If you want to talk about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So I have an EP coming out next week. It's like 4 tracks. It's basically 4 different collabs. One is with Dirt Monkey, one is with Hullabaloo, one is with Sub Doctor, and one is with Jonah Hodges. And it's called Wub EP. And it's basically just like a bunch of wubs.
Oh yeah, it's heavy. That's the one you sent me a while back, right? That thing is fucking nasty.
Yeah, I think I sent it to you. Hold on, did I send you the artwork?
You did not. No, let's take a look at that.
Uh, yeah, we can premiere the artwork here. I haven't posted it online at other places yet.
Okay.
Where is it? Is it here? Yeah, here we go. Oh no, it's big. It's too powerful for
Oh.
Discord. Fuck.
It's all good.
Hold on. Maybe if I go to Dropbox, I can send it that way.
Yeah. Let me just
Yeah.
double check to see if there's anything else I wanted to ask about in this part of it. Oh, there is one more question I want to ask while you're getting that situated. Um, what would you say are your bigger influences, both like as music that you've consumed or like experiences that you've had? Like how would you say that like different things influence you as an artist?
I would say generally experiences influence me more than music. Like whenever I have like a psychedelic experience or something like that, or whenever I have a really, I don't know, just any sort of experience. Maybe actually the experience could be going to a show or something like that. But any of these kind of experiences, they seem to influence me more than music because well, I don't know if influence is the right word. They inspire me more than other music for sure.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, wait, what was the question?
Oh, like what? How do you think that these things influence you, or for the way you're phrasing it, like how do these experiences inspire you? Like, is there something specific about them, or is it just kind of like you go out, you experience the world, and then you kind of filter that through your music?
All right. I don't know. I noticed one thing I would do like a lot back in the day was I'd go to like a doof and then I'd listen to psytrance for like multiple days straight. And then rather than try to like copy any specific like song that I heard or anything like that, I would try and just like emulate the entire vibe of the party and try and, get that kind of same energy of like what the essence of that party was into into a tune. And I guess I still kind of do that sometimes too, like in terms of going out and like, I'll see a show or something like that, and then I'll try and just like emulate whatever energy was around that show in music in whatever way I can.
Oh, that's really cool. I mean, I like that approach. It's a very interesting way of kind of taking not just like musical experiences, but non-musical experiences and trying to like translate them in a way to help the audience kind of experience them as well.
Well, I think that like all good music is an abstraction of humanity, right? It's like it's all an abstraction of like a feeling that you must have as a human because you're a human being alive. And I think anybody who like makes music based off other music is just like adding another layer of abstraction to this whole fucking thing, and it doesn't really make any sense to do that, I feel like.
No, that makes sense. I can get that. I can get that. Well, with that, I guess we can actually start to move into kind of your music, I guess, and or at least how you write music. So I wanted to start this off by playing two tracks of yours. Did you get a chance to pick the tunes that you wanted to show off, or should I like pick up your Spotify or?
Well, actually, like if you picked up my Spotify, probably most of the project files on there aren't even on my computer anymore. Like as soon as I finish it, I just move it onto an external.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I mean, I can talk about this one actually. This is kind of interesting. It's like a down tempo track I'm writing with Mersive at the moment.
Oh, for
What's the
sure.
best way to share this with you?
You should be able to share your screen, but I don't know if the audio will translate.
Yeah, it might be tough. All right, I'm gonna share my screen. What up?
Me.
Um,
There we go. I'll let everyone see what you're seeing. You can do it through Discord, says Theo. I know there is a way to share audio. You could set in so you can share audio. People are saying in chat. So there is a way to share your audio inside of Discord. And if anyone can tell me how to do that, I would actually make my own lessons a lot easier.
So I was actually gonna stream like 2 days ago, and I just for the fucking life of me couldn't get my Ableton to run through OBS.
Oh no.
So like I don't know what happened. I rewired some shit the other day, and I guess I just fucked something up. Because I have like a pretty elaborate setup. I'm running 4 sound cards,
Oh
so
jeez.
yeah, it can get a bit confusing in here.
Could imagine. So
All right.
which project is this?
This
The
is just a
down
down
tempo
tempo
one.
thing I'm working on. I need to figure out if it's sending audio to you though. So, all right, I know for shit. I think. Hold on, let me just like jump under my table real quick.
All right. So as Bill gets that ready, I will interact with chat a little bit. I know I need to get Zoom, and I know that Discord audio will be in mono, but don't worry, y'all will get a chance to see and hear everything, I'm sure. Um, but if
All right.
oh, you got it.
Possibly. Hold on. Let me change my channel layout here. Mute this. Oh, okay. So this is the stream out for sure.
I hear it. It might
Okay.
be coming through your speakers, but we
Yeah.
can hear it.
Um. Fuck. What about now? Is that coming through
It
my
sounds
microphone?
it sounds like it's coming through the mic. Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, if you want, we can also just kind of like talk about stuff and then like for like cuz would you say this is a work in progress?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not finished.
All right. So why don't well in the meantime, why don't we start off by playing through one of the songs that you've already released and then we can just kind of talk about it. And then once
All
it
right.
comes to this one, you can kind of show us kind of your process.
Yeah.
So
Sounds good.
I'm gonna hop onto Spotify, um, and I would say like which of these, which of I'd say like your let's say 5 or 10 most recent tracks. Which of these would you want to go over? Um, we could do like the Dead Mouse collab. We could do something off Apophenia. We could do the new
Uh.
track Eye to Eye.
Oh yeah. Depends what kind of stuff do you want to talk about.
Well, let me just take a look. So I was hoping to talk about basically your thought process while writing the track. If you had any like goals in mind while you were writing it, if you were kind of working like you always say you're a very reactive artist. You kind of see what comes out and you kind of compile the results. And then
Yeah.
like also like any problems you were having or any discoveries you've made that like kind of made your work better moving past it. So
Yeah, yeah.
any track works.
Okay, in that case, like maybe the best one to talk about would be the Dead Mouse one.
For sure, for sure. So I will play probably about a minute and a half to 2 minutes of this, just so
Okay.
that we don't get super caught out by content ID, because I'm pretty sure Mousetrap has content ID on Twitch, so we're probably going to get this VOD muted. But don't worry, everyone, we'll have it all on YouTube soon. But I'm just going to play the. I'll play the intro. I'll play the first drop, and I'll play a little bit of the breakdown, and then we can talk about it if that sounds good.
Yeah, cool. Sounds good.
Cool, cool. So here we go. Now I'm going to jump forward a little bit to. Here's that big breakdown. Now, I'm going to pause real quick. Now, could you tell us about, I guess, before we kind of go into the section right here for the people who are watching on the stream, they heard that. Could you talk a little bit about what it was like to work with Joel, to do a collaboration with deadmau5?
Yeah, so pretty much he just like hit me up on Twitter. He just like started following me one day, and then my manager was like losing his shit. He was like, "Oh man, deadmau5 just followed you on Twitter. That's crazy." And I was like, "Oh yeah, cool. I'll DM him." So I DM'd him, and I was just like, "Hey man, big fan of your stuff. Cheers for the follow and stuff like that." And then he basically like hit me back and was like, "Yeah, I'm a big fan of your stuff too." And I was like, "Oh fuck, that's awesome." And then we just chatted about like random shit. Like I mean, I can't remember what we chatted about, but we chatted like that whole day on Skype, and then we chatted like the next whole day on Skype too. So we just like were chatting a ton straight off the bat, and we get along pretty well. And then I was in London, and he sent me like a MIDI file and some stems, and was like, "Hey, you want to work on this?" And it was the chord progression from that Kill the Mouse thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, "Oh, isn't that like the Kill the Mouse thing?" And he's like, "Yeah, but I mean, you know, I wrote this chord progression and nothing ever came of it, so like we might as well just make it our collab." So I was like, "Fuck yeah!" I always really liked that Kill the Mouse thing. It was, in my opinion, like one of the coolest things that I'd ever heard Joel write. Um, so I was like, "Fuck yeah, I'm down." So he gave me a MIDI clip, which was the chord progression, and then he gave me 3 stems, which was basically the chord progression run through different serum patches and arpeggiators. Or it might have been Cthulhu that was doing the arpeggiation, but that's basically all he gave me to work with. And then I didn't really hear from him for like months, and I was like, "Oh fuck, I don't know if this is like a collab that's even going to happen anymore." But I just like wasn't really willing to take that as an answer, so I was just like, "Fuck it, I'm just going to sit on stream and just make this tune." And then, you know, if he likes it, cool. And then if he doesn't, whatever. So I basically wrote the entire track just based off those few elements that he gave me. And there's actually all the streams for that on my website.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
And then Yeah, so I pretty much just sat there, wrote the entire track, and then I think it was one day I was streaming, or he was streaming, sorry, and he had some like track thing where you could pay him $20 to like listen to your track. And I think like one of my fans sent him that the collab track, and then he was like, "Oh, this is fucking sick. Like I didn't know that Bill did all this work to it." And then he hit me up, like I was traveling in Australia maybe a few months after that, and then he sent me a text and was like, "Hey, can you send me the final version for that track?" So I sent him the final version, and then next thing I knew, I was getting a contract in my email for a release on Mouseville Level 2.
That's really cool. Did that actually influence your album being signed to Mousetrap, or was that like a separate thing?
Well, I mean, talking to him obviously influenced it,
Of
but
course, yeah.
uh, I don't know. I guess I figured like if I'm doing a collab with Dead Mouse and I also have this album and I'm also putting the Mum and Dad soundtrack on Mousetrap, then I might as well like do my album too and just like kind of make a big impression on the Mousetrap fans and be like, hey, here's who I am and this is what I do. So yeah, it was kind of all intentional. Like there was a whole plan there to just basically, it was like Operation Infiltrate Mousetrap. um, so yeah, I think I successfully did that at this point.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm still waiting for the No Mana collab.
Oh, we already did one.
Oh,
We
what?
Yeah, the Electricado one. It's called Disco Cunt,
Oh
but with no
fuck.
vowels.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
forgot about that one. Yeah. Oh man, yeah. See, that's the other thing is like, honestly, like, 'cause I try to keep up with as much of your work as I can, but you are a workhorse. Like you just put
Yeah.
out so many tunes, dude.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to talk about that a little bit later. But let's keep listening to a little bit of this track, and then we can talk about kind of like the particulars of like what you were thinking while you were writing it, anything you might have learned while you were writing it. But for now, let's give it another minute or two just to listen to it.
All right. Yeah, let's see. Turn on. Wait. Fuck.
Yeah. Oh no,
Oh
I
yeah,
know the
because I
mic's off. Oh, there we go.
wait.
Perfect. Yeah. No,
It was
you're.
because I was doing the screen sharing thing, I
Oh,
guess, and it fucked up my cam.
that's all good. That's all good. Yeah. Noise Signal did have a question. Did Joel master it or did you?
I mastered it, yeah. So actually the final version that you hear on the Mouseville Level 2 is just literally straight out of my Ableton, like what with the limiter on the master.
That's interesting. Like I'm a bit surprised because it's like Joel has all this fucking outboard gear, like fucking
So dude,
distresses and stuff. But
I went to his house the other day. Did I tell you this?
no, how's that?
Yeah. Okay. So the other day, I played this festival in Scranton, Pennsylvania, which is just below Toronto, and Andrew Huang asked me to go hang out with him. So I went to Andrew Huang's house, and then literally as soon as I landed in Toronto, I texted Joel and I was like, "Hey man, I'm in Toronto. Like, I don't know if you're around this week or whatever, but if you want to hang out, just hit me up." And and then he texted me back and he was like, "Yeah, I'm around. I'm not doing shit. Come and hang out." And he just sent me his address, and I was like, "Sweet." So like I got in. This was like before Andrew had even picked me up at the airport. So he like first thing I said when I got in the car, I was like, "Let's go to Dead Mouse's house." And he was like, "Yeah, I'm down." So we just went there and we ended up staying the night actually. It was fucking cool. We hung out in his pool and drank a ton of Coronas and watched cops on a projector through a Function One system.
That's
And
amazing.
then yeah, he showed me his studio. It sounds really good in there for sure. It sounds surprisingly good considering his fucking walls are made out of metal.
That's what I was gonna say. Like that studio is like lined with fucking Euro racks and shit.
Yeah,
So it's
exactly.
like
Just like huge reflective surfaces, but it really does sound good in there.
that's awesome. Did you get a chance to play with anything or?
Someone says I like how all of your stories involve substance abuse. Yeah, it's kind of true. It's kind of like my baseline for like just anything. Do you,
Awesome.
I mean, I guess like I could also just interchangeably say, yeah, like, oh yeah, I went to Dead Mouse's house and I ate food on the way, and then I did a poop. It's like I could just tell you like more facts about it just to like build a stronger picture or something.
A
I don't
complete narrative. but as far as this track goes, like the questions that I had, like mostly related to kind of the process from start to finish, which you already kind of started to go into, like how the collab came about, like that you streamed it and stuff. So like, what would you say are like the biggest hurdles that you had when writing the track, and what would you say is the biggest discovery or the most interesting thing you learned while writing the track?
So, yeah, I mean, I think that that track it just went through so many iterations, but I don't think I learned that much whilst doing it. But I went in like so much harder on it than I've gone in on like most tracks because I was like, I know this is probably going to be like my most played track ever, so I should like just go fucking in on it and make it as good as I possibly can. And I mean, really, you should have that thought with every track you make, right? But it's just not the case. Like a lot of tracks, I'm just like, yeah, whatever, it's fucking fine.
Yeah,
Just like
it's filler for
half-ass
the
it.
album.
Yeah, something like that. Or I try not to think of any tracks like that. But yeah, I don't know. I did put like a lot of importance on this one, where I was like, this needs to be fucking the best shit that I can possibly do. So I basically rewrote it like 5 or 6 times, and this like all occurs in the streams that you can watch on my website of the Dead Mouse collabs. And basically, it's like 70 hours of me working on this one fucking tune. And it's like I would write the whole thing, and then I'd stem it all out, and then I'd re-import all the stems, and then I'd like chop it all up and rewrite it again, and then I'd like render all those stems, and then re-import those, and fuck with them more. And the whole thing was just a huge process of like just you know, rendering and rewriting and rendering and rewriting.
See, that's something that I find really interesting because I've been finding myself kind of feeling more and more inclined to like take my whole project, stem it out, create a new session with all those stems, and just kind of go buck wild with that as if I'm almost like remixing my own whip. And like
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like that's almost like because I'm not the only person I know who's done that, and like you saying that, it makes me wonder like, do you think that it's something that helps you finish tracks to work in that way, or is it something you do only on occasion?
It definitely helps me finish tracks because I feel like once you have like say 100 channels of shit just like crunching your CPU and like there's just so much shit going on. There's like automation everywhere. There's like little fucking edits everywhere, and like there's just shit everywhere. It gets a little hard to like function in that environment. I find like if you just render your stuff down to like 8 stems, you're like, oh sweet, now it's like I can kind of it like allows you to take a step back and just see the bigger picture of the track and be able to just like really quickly grab like chunks of shit and move it around and like just test a lot of ideas faster. So it kind of like transcends your mental processing power a little bit as well as your computer's processing power.
Yeah, that's smart. I'm with that. That's really cool. Well, is there anything else you would want to talk about regarding this track? Anything you think might be kind of neat? I do know that there was a bit of a breakdown of this video, didn't you? Or of this song, didn't you do like a little breakdown of it on your YouTube channel?
Not this one. I did a breakdown of Apophenia.
Apophenia,
And that
yeah.
was on the Mousetrap channel, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I was thinking is because like I know that you were talking about it. You mentioned that there's like people hidden in there, which shh, no
Yeah.
one tell UMG.
Yeah, there is, but no one's found it yet, and Joel himself has not heard it, so
Yeah,
uh, yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be in there, really. I mean, I wish I hadn't put it in there,
yeah. Well,
um, but it was in there, and it made it to the final version. I didn't really think about it because, like, as far as I knew, I didn't really know the track was going to come out until he hit me up, and then I fucking all of a sudden had a contract sitting in my email about a thing that's coming out on one of his EPs. Um, and I kind of thought, like, because I did send him the project file back, I kind of thought that he would have like done a bit more to the track as well, like, and maybe just like made some edits and changed some shit. But he didn't. He was just like, "This is fine," and he just put it out, which is like cool that he thought that he felt that way. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. If I could have gone back and done it again, I probably would have just like
Totally.
replaced a couple of things in that track for legal reasons.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I guess kind of on that note, are there any other little tidbits? Not anything legally incriminating, obviously, but like anything like neat that you think people might not have noticed about the tune, or anything neat that you want to share before we move on to the work in progress that you were trying to show for us?
No, that's pretty much it. I fucking wish that my audio would be sending, but it's just not.
Yeah.
Uh, I haven't changed anything either. Like the whole setup should be the same as it was like the other day. Hmm. Yeah, I really need to like probably just spend an afternoon figuring out how to fix my stream audio again. So I don't know, like what's the best way to do this then?
Well, if you have a render of it, you could send me like a snippet of it or a little clip of it, and we could play it out, and then, you could talk about it, and then we could like just use the webcam to just kind of look at the project. I mean, it's not obviously optimal, but it'll get us through to the next part of this.
Yeah, let's just do that. All right, cool. Let me really quickly render it and just upload it to Dropbox then.
Yeah, sounds good. I guess in the meanwhile, we could take a couple of questions, because I remember Rafter in chat had a question that I thought was pretty good. And I know that you and I have definitely had a number of conversations on this topic. Do you feel being too knowledgeable discourages true originality? And I have opinions on this, but I want you to discuss that first.
No, actually, I don't think so. And I mean, we can really easily start talking about determinism and free will off the back of this too, because like if I was to ask you what your favorite city was, like what would you say?
I would say my favorite city is probably going to be like San Francisco, one of the cities that I lived in, one of the cities that I had like most of my like formative experiences in. Like second place would probably be like my hometown.
Okay. And during that thought process, did you think of Cairo, Egypt?
No, I did not.
Okay, why not? Because you weren't knowledgeable enough, right? Like you
Exactly.
haven't been there, you haven't visited it, and so in that sense, like being more knowledgeable can maybe help you, you know, make some better decisions or like some more educated decisions. But I totally understand what he means as well. It's like knowing too much can kind of like sort of gear your decisions like too much,
Mhm.
especially I think in so I don't know. Like, here's the thing that I think I'm realizing because the usually when this conversation comes up, it's surrounding music theory, right?
Oh yeah.
And like for me at least, um, and for me, I don't really know any music theory, and I know enough to know like kind of some things, but uh, I think like a huge misconception with music theory is that a lot of people write music from the theory, which is almost never the case. It's usually just a way to justify it after the fact, right? Like somebody will just sort of like they'll practice scales and shit and they'll do all of that kind of stuff. But then through that practice, they will like then just, have a bunch of second naturey kind of things going on with their process. And then they'll just write music. And then it's like a nice way to justify it after the fact. But I think like a big misconception of people who really don't know a lot of music theory is that people write music based off music theory, which pretty much only exists in classical music, I would say, or maybe jazz too.
Oh yeah.
But even jazz is like super improvisational.
Oh yeah, I mean the way that I looked at it is like you practice the theory, you kind of ingrain the information into your system so that like when it comes time to write, you're just sort of like letting the muscle memory take over. You're letting whatever you hear go on, and for me personally, it's always been about like giving me more ways to experiment. Like, I'll write something and then I'll be like, well, what if I use, a substitute dominant here to tweak this thing and try and find a different way.
Yeah, the same thing exists for sound design because
Mhm.
with sound design you could very easily treat like I could take all the audio theory that I learned at SAE and be like, all right, I'm going to do a sound design session. Now remember, no additive EQing, only subtractive EQing, and remember, only compress one time and always compress like before or after the EQ, and don't add too much distortion because you don't want it to be clipping and like all of this kind of shit. And if I took that approach to sound design, my sound design would be the most boring, dry you know what I mean? But like
Yeah.
so knowing a bunch of audio theory, it's good, but it could be like detrimental if I took that approach completely to making bass sounds, for instance. Whereas instead I take like the other approach of just like doing everything and distorting things like 20 times and
Yeah.
all of this kind of stuff. And then I use audio theory as sort of like filler knowledge where I can get to a point of like the processing chain or whatever and be like, oh, you know what would be cool if I like phase inverted one side and like, then fucking did some weird shit with a flanger or a comb filter or something, and understanding like next things that could be interesting, definitely can help the process a bit, but it's not that important.
No, I agree. And I mean, at the end of the day, it is a lot of it comes down to like just the human pattern recognition machine that is our brain, like just looking for patterns and trying to figure out what works. So I'm with you on that a lot, actually. Um,
Yeah, I may have just fixed my shit. Can you hear it coming through, not the mic now? Here, let me unplug my mic. Can you hear this?
no,
No.
unfortunately, I
Okay.
cannot. Damn.
Fuck.
Um,
All right. Oh, never mind. I'll just send you a render then and then talk
Alrighty.
about it.
Sounds
I'm
good.
so confused as to why this shit stopped working. It just like the other day, just for some reason, I turned my stream on. It was like, nope, not a thing today.
Yeah, it's tough.
Like this sound card's inputs have died, or maybe like the cables I'm sending to this sound card have died or
Uh, Something.
something.
Yeah, I mean, I have found myself struggling constantly since I started streaming, so I think it's something that we'll never be able to fix. So do you want to start this at the same time? I'll count us down. We can play. If there's any time you want to pause, you can just let me know.
Hold on. What about this? Can you hear it now? Or is that still through the
I
mic?
think it's still through the mic. It sounds
Ah,
very
fuck it.
roomy.
Don't worry, I'll figure this out later.
Yeah. All right. So I'm just gonna play it from the Dropbox link.
Mhm.
Do you want me to count you in?
Count me in.
Yeah, so we can
I'll
play at the
just
same time, or do you just want to go from wherever?
I'll listen to your stream at a very quiet volume.
Okay, for sure, for sure. All right. So let me know when you're in, and then I can just get started.
Yeah, I'm in.
Okay, for sure. Phrasing. No, okay, let's go.
hold on, my bad.
What's up?
So that section with all the fucked up synths, I need to fix. So I'll show you why. Here, let me share my screen with you real quick.
Alrighty, everything is up. So
All right,
ready
turn on
whenever you are.
screen share. Okay, cool. So, yeah, there's like this clacky percussion section. But then I had this idea to switch between 440 hertz equal temperament tuning and 432 hertz Pythagorean tuning.
Ooh, nice.
But then I suppose like somewhere during the process, I decided to switch it to some weird shit and didn't change it back. So you get these weird synths that sound like this, which sounds all fucked. But really this should be, so in Zebra 2, you can change them. You know how like, you know what microtonal tuning is, right? So like, you take like an octave and then instead of splitting it up into 12 equal parts, you sort of, each note is like a different ratio away from each other. So, you know, C and C sharp are not the same distance apart as they would be in equal temperament tuning, and then C sharp and D are not the same distance. And like some distances are shorter and some distances are longer. And what ends up happening is it starts to sound really affixy and it starts to sound really like sort of detuned. But yeah, that was what was called a Farabee 22 tone scale, which I'm not interested in. It sounds like shit. So it should have sounded like this.
That's cool. I mean, it's interesting because I actually like the dissonant nature of it, because like it definitely sounds quote unquote like wrong, but it fits within the rhythm because you wrote it in a way that kind of works. So all of the harmonic context is almost self-contained, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, so the section before it is 440, and then I put this like filler in. So basically, it's just a riser that sounds like this. I don't know how well you can hear this. Can you hear this?
And just the very end of it, yeah.
Barely. Yeah, it's because it's like a sweep, I suppose. But basically, that sweep is tuned down 8 cents, so it kind of brings you into the next section, which is all at 432. So hold on, let me just re-render this section real quick. Yeah, cool. So I'll just render like these two sections so you can hear the change, and I'll just call this the change.wave, and then I'll just maybe get an MP3 and dump it into Discord or something like that.
That's perfect.
But yeah, pretty much like I thought it'd be interesting in the same song to kind of have sections that go into microtonal tuning and then come back out into 440. So it's like some sections sound like, you know, completely normal, and then other sections sound a bit wonky and bent.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I mean, it's cool because like it gives people who aren't like prepared for something so alien in terms of like the harmonic language that we're used to. Like it gives them like an entry point, and then it moves into the more kind of dissonant stuff.
Yeah, but it's not that dissonant. So like here, take a listen. Like here's the thing is like a lot of people think like 432 is like this hugely different fucking thing that'll make like the water molecules in your body like shake, and you'll probably, you know, win $1 million or something like that. But it's just not true. And like this kind of proves it. Like I literally put two sections right next to each other. And also the other thing with 432 is a lot of fucking dumbasses think that like just tuning your song down 8 cents makes it 432, which it doesn't, because then it's still equal temperament, right?
Exactly. Yeah. There was an Adam Neely video on that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's like this other argument where they're like, yeah, but 432, it sounds like fatter and warmer. It's like, yeah, you fucking idiots, lower in pitch.
Absolutely. No, I mean, it's definitely something that I've gotten into discussions. I'll phrase it that way with people. Friendly disagreements.
Yeah, I have unfriendly disagreements, but but yeah, check out this section, and you'll see what I mean. It's like one section is completely like normal, and then the other section kind of goes into this 432 thing.
All right, I'm gonna play it in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. definitely hear those crunchy notes right at the end there. Oh yeah, that's just
Yeah, notice how it just gets like more dissonant in that next section.
exactly, yeah.
That's all it is. But yeah, a lot of people try to like put this super magical connotation onto it, and I think it's annoying because it kind of scares people. Like it scared me for a while out of like doing any microtonal shit because I was like, well, I don't want to be a fucking hippie.
Yeah.
It's like some identity thing that's like associated with microtonal tuning when really it's like microtonal tuning is fucking awesome. Like Aphex Twin is probably one of my favorite artists, and literally I've noticed almost every single one of his songs is in microtonal tuning.
Oh yeah, no, I mean I've found that like, you know, it's a very interesting moment once you kind of look at different tuning systems and different divisions of the octave, not as kind of like some special thing, but just like a different color palette. Like it's the difference between using only primary colors or using only grayscale or giving yourself access to all these secondary and tertiary color combinations, just to give you more possibilities. Even if you're restricting yourself to just one, it opens up more chances to do something that you wouldn't have thought to do before.
For sure. And also like isn't a day like not even actually 24 hours? It's like 23.9 or some shit.
Yeah, like, and it's
Which means that like the whole measurement of hertz and frequency is fucking ridiculous like from the get-go because it's like all a hertz is like 1 cycle per second, right? But we don't even really measure seconds properly, so
and well, and it's also kind of in that same vein. Like a second, believe it or not, a second here on Earth takes less time than a second on the International Space Station.
right. So does that mean like 432 in Earth is like 434 or some shit on the space station?
Yeah, it could be. Like it's there's a whole like different layer of possible changes just based on physics. So it comes back to like the fact that like we are really good at pattern recognition, so good at it that we make up patterns where none exist. Isn't that kind of the whole point of Apophenia? Is that?
Yeah.
Or the
So well,
recency
Apophenia.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the recency effect is just like you'll be more biased to like the last thing that you've seen. Apophenia is like yeah, sort of like pattern recognition, I guess. It's like if you know believe in fucking horoscopes or some shit. It's it's just you make meaningful connections between unmeaningless data.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean it's
Sort of like if you see the number like 23 and everything or something, that would be considered apophenia, I suppose.
I can dig it. I mean, I guess kind of in that way, like how did the Apophenia project come about? Like, did you go into it with that mindset, or did the project kind of get named post hoc, so to speak?
So it got named like after the fact because I was getting asked by like my manager to do a concept album, and I was thinking about it. I was like, how can I do a concept album? Because in my opinion, like everybody's had such different experiences with music and stuff like that. That how can you like listen to a song and have it have an intrinsic meaning? Because you know the note C might mean something different to two people, and like a certain type of chord that might sound pretty dark to one person might not sound so dark to another person. Or like even vocal stuff, you know, like even if you have like words, like Tool, they have lyrics in every one of their songs, and all of their fans somehow manage to derive different meanings from them, even though they're very obviously saying like a thing, but it's apparently not so obvious. So for me, it's just that was the whole idea between Apophenia is that it doesn't matter what I do and it doesn't matter what I write. In the end, people are just going to sort of make their own connections based on their past experiences and their own ideals and their own, you know, all of that. They're just going to like do that themselves. Like they're going to make the concept album in their head themselves.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, it's definitely something that I've thought about as I've gotten more and more in depth in terms of like what I'm writing and like what my goals are is and I've talked about this before. Maybe it's something that'll resonate with you, where like once you have released your music or your art at all into the world, like it no longer becomes your art, so to speak, because like you just said,
Bro, it's resonating so hard.
Exactly. So like two people are going to feel it differently, and like they're going to take their own meaning from it based on wherever they're at in their life at that point.
Yeah, totally. I agree. Yeah. Music's a weird thing too. It's like, something that it only really exists while you're listening to it, and then when you're not listening to it, there's like this weird imprint of it in your head. I always
Exactly.
find that
Yeah.
weird too. I don't know if that's related. Probably not.
No, I think it is. Like the way that our brains process the sounds is going to change, not just based on like who we are, like what our brain chemistry is doing, but also like our past experiences and our current situation. And going back and listening to a song 2 years down the road, it'll might have a completely different context based on what's happened in those 2 years.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But also like on the other side of that, it's kind of interesting that you can like listen to a song from high school and then it just makes you feel like you're in high school or whatever.
Absolutely, yeah. Same sort of thing in both directions.
Yeah.
I mean that's cool. I mean this is getting a little bit off into the weeds a little bit. So
I'm not a
to
philosopher, bro. I'm just out here philosophizing.
hey man, it's better us than Sam Harris, but never mind. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But
I like Sam Harris. He's cool.
no, I
You
mean
don't like him, right? Because he put that guy on his podcast.
I mean I let's I don't know if we want to get into that on this podcast.
I want to get into it.
I mean, it's a little bit off, but let's maybe save that for the very end. But yeah, I will just say I have disagreements with some of the way that Sam Harris approaches objective morality. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, I had this conversation the other day with Bleep Loop about how deplatforming people is like important. And for instance, he doesn't like Joe Rogan because Joe Rogan has some alt-right people on his podcast, and I think that's like the same issue that some people have with Sam Harris because he had that what was his name, Charles Murray, the guy who wrote that the Bell Curve or whatever.
Oh yeah.
He had that guy on his podcast, so a lot of left people are like, fuck that guy. And the same reason why a lot of people hate Jack Dorsey from Twitter too, because he doesn't like ban all the Nazis. But then the other day, Bleep Loop got he didn't get banned, but he got like his account limited because he
Twitter
was
jail.
saying, yeah, he's in Twitter jail because he told, what did he say? He tweeted like, I hope all fascists die of deadly heart attacks or something like that. And then it was Twitter against Twitter's rules. It was like, no, we don't like accept this.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, holy fuck, I think Twitter might suck.
Twitter does kind of suck, and we could probably talk about that in the final part right before we go into the viewer Q&A, because I do have some questions about like the industry and marketing and stuff like that, and that involves social media. So
Okay.
for now, I kind of wanted to focus still on like workflow and production process. So for this project that we were looking at, is there anything else you wanted to talk about, or should we kind of move on to a bit more of like a generalized discussion?
Oh, whatever, man. It's your thing. We can do whatever.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So I guess I have three different series of questions, just kind of about like your workflow and about your process. The first part would be like, how do you start a new project? Like, do you have a specific mindset that you're going into? Like, how far do you usually get into a session? Like, what would you say is like the average one session completion amount? And like, what does that entail when you're working on a new song?
Usually when I go to start a new song, I can start a few different ways, and it really depends on like the job I'm doing. Like for instance, lately I've been writing music for Facebook, which is just kind of like they'll send me a bunch of shit and be like, make something that sounds like this. So I'll just start from whatever they send me. Basically, I'll be like, all right, my starting point is literally loading somebody else's track into the sequencer and trying to figure it out. Or trying to make something that sounds similar or has the same vibe. But when I'm making my own music, it depends. Sometimes I'll make what I would call like functional music, and that's music to play at a concert, usually at a show. And usually that is like bangers, right? It's heavy stuff. So like my main goal with that is just how do I make the heaviest thing? So it's usually just like sound design related is where I would start usually, or beat related, like trying to make a big heavy beat and riff, and then trying to sort of make it more eloquent with better sound design and edits and shit over the process of the session. And then if I'm like sitting down to make more like housey stuff, like electricato stuff, then I usually would just start with a house beat and then build off that. Because it's pretty progressive music, you sort of almost want to build it linearly. And then with the IDM stuff, like the glitchier stuff, I usually start melodically. So it's usually like starting with harmony and melody and stuff, and then I'll sort of build beats around that.
Oh, that's cool. So it really it depends on what sound you're working in, if I'm understanding
Yeah,
correctly.
yeah, exactly. And that's kind of like the three main ones I have at this point is like electricato stuff, heavy Mr. Bill stuff, and soft Mr. Bill stuff.
Oh, that's cool. In that way, like for those three different styles, like how far would you say you usually get in the first session?
Usually I get pretty far in the first session. I would say like I usually get like 2 minutes of a tune done or something like two like I would say like two like one to two like detailed minutes that have a lot of good edits and a lot of good transitions and stuff like that, and then some sections and shit like that. And then it usually takes me a long time to figure out the ending, and it usually takes me a long time to mix it properly and make it sound really good because I find like I'm really bad at making two extreme decisions like on in a single day. I'll be like, oh yeah, like one day I'll be just loving bass or something, and I'll be like, it needs all the bass today, and I'll just like put way too much bass, and then I'll come back on another day where I'm feeling more conservative, and I'll be like, I put way too much bass. I need to like remove some of that. So it takes me like a while to mix it because I need to kind of like find the middle ground of like all of my preferences in terms of like what a song should sound like.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Take a larger snapshot of my ideal mix down.
Okay, so I mean, it sounds like you really focus in the first session or at the very beginning on like getting a really solid idea, and then you kind of iterate upon it and develop that idea into something that it's almost like it's like a half-life where every time you go to the next section it takes longer and longer to degrade, or in this case improve to the next version.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Well, with that in mind, like, would you have any tips for someone who is like having trouble coming up with a new idea? Like, I know for a lot of people, like, there's this idea of the curse of the virgin canvas, where like starting a new project is very daunting because there are so many possibilities. Like, what advice would you have for people who are kind of stuck on like I don't know where to start?
Yeah, I would suggest like just enforcing some creative limitation on yourself, Like the classic one is, oh, let's just make a song based on this one sample or something. Or, just make a song using nothing but like uh every second note in the piano roll. So don't even adhere to a scale. Just be like, I'm just gonna use C, D, F. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like just some
Mhm.
stupid fucking rule or something. Or I'm just gonna make a song just using nothing but this ocarina. I don't even know if this works.
Let's find out.
Yeah, how do you play an ocarina? You just blowing it? Oh yeah, sick.
There we go.
Tight.
Awesome.
I think
Perfect.
I've ever blown that thing before. That's the first time I've blown that thing, man.
You should make a song. You should make a song out of it. I think that'd be cool.
Are you saying I should blow my ocarina more often?
Absolutely. You should be blowing that thing every day. Only way to get better at it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sorry. Well, kind of moving on to like what you were saying about kind of developing the idea. Like once you have those 1 or 2 minutes kind of written out, once you have like let's say like an intro, a build, and a drop, or like a more melodic kind of breakdown going into like a main beat section, like. How do you take that and transform it into a completed song arrangement? Like, what techniques do you have to kind of like make sure that the song doesn't get stuck in a loop, or doesn't get stuck in kind of like the ideation phase, as I call it?
Oh yeah, loopitis.
Yep, loopitis.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, I still get that too sometimes, where some of my tracks will just get stuck in that loop form, and I'll find it pretty hard to get out of it. But generally, I'll just sort of like create. One thing that I'll do is I'll render my master channel. and I'll just throw it into like a drum rack or something, and then because you know how you can do like slice to drum rack or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So like sometimes I'll render my whole track and then I'll just chuck it in Ableton, right click it and go slice to drum rack or slice to like a simpler on like that cutting mode.
Hmm.
And then I'll just sort of like play different beats in based on that. It allows you to really quickly just rearrange the beat in different ways. And for me, that can be like a good way to spark ideas to get to the next section. Another thing I'll do is I'll put like effects on my master all the time. Like I'll put resonators and glitching plugins and just all sorts of shit on my master and just see what happens. And quite often, like you said earlier, I'm more of a reactive artist. So quite often it'll do something that'll just spark another idea, and then I'll be like, oh, cool, that'll be a great like next section, I guess.
Oh yeah, yeah. Do you try and think about like song structure at all when you're writing? Because I've noticed from listening to your works, like you have a very developed sense of kind of song form, and it doesn't like strictly adhere to a lot of the things that like I teach students, where it's like you can have kind of an A-B format. You can use like intro, build, drop as like kind of like a shell, and expand from there. Like you follow that kind of roughly, but you also have like your own sensibility about like when a section should really impact and when a section should like be much, I guess, softer than what you had earlier in the project. Like, is that something that, again, like you're saying, is more reactive, or is there something that you're kind of noticing that pushes you in that direction?
No, I would just say it's reactive. Like I try not to think too hard about song structure unless it is for bangers, and then it kind of like has to be build drop build drop.
Mm-hmm.
But even still, I try to make it a little bit more exciting than that if I can. But usually when I'm writing stuff that does require like more technical structure, I'll usually just do it off feel, and I'll just be like, oh, I feel like it needs to change here, or like it's getting boring here, or I feel like it melodically is getting stale, or rhythmically it's getting stale, or something like that. Um, but I don't know, like I think it's just based off listening to a bunch of music that has complicated structures to it. Like I don't listen to a ton of Square Pusher anymore, but I used to listen to a ton of Square Pusher, and I think his song structure is really sick. And also like oh man, I think like the ultimate song structure band is the Beatles. Like they just will throw like bridges everywhere, and then they'll like do weird shit where they'll kind of, I don't know, I don't even really understand it. And they'll do like key changes all the time and stuff. And to me, like that kind of songwriting is really exciting. So I'll try and sort of like, I guess, take that idea a little bit. Not that I really studied like the Beatles song form at all, but some of their songs have like, when I'm listening, I'm like never bored. Like there's constantly enough changes, and I love that shit. I love when there's like just very like sudden changes all the time that re-engage the listener and just constantly make it exciting to your ear and stuff like that. So I just try and keep that in mind a lot when I'm writing music, I guess.
That makes sense. No, that makes a lot of sense, and it actually it helps kind of lead into what I want to talk about for like the last little bit of this, which is like how you get to a finished song, because part of kind of struggling through that middle section is making sure that there are enough changes, that nothing feels too stale or too repetitive. So like, how do you like get to a finished song, like from this part where it's like, I have all these ideas, I've developed this out, I've kind of gotten the structure sussed out, and now I need to like decide, well, this song's done. Like, how do you get to that point? How do you know when your song is finished?
Yeah, I think the way that I get to a finished song is just try to convince myself that it doesn't need any more work done to it. It's like not even really a musical thing. It's more of like a mind state thing. It's just like, it's kind of like that Mitch Hedberg joke, he's like, oh, sometimes I'll like, if I think of a funny joke, I'll write it down. But if I can't find a pen, I'll just convince myself it's not funny.
Yeah.
And it's the same with like music. I feel like I'll just kind of like convince myself that it's done. If I can't figure out a way to finish, I'll just be like, oh, no, it's fine. It's all good.
I'm with that. I mean, and kind of touching on like kind of the mental aspect of it. Like, do you find yourself having to like overcome like writer's block or any kind of self-doubt about like, is this song really done, or am I just stuck, or is it kind of more of a, I have this thing that is basically done. I just need to tell myself, like, look, it's okay. You can let it go. You can kind of move on.
Yeah, I think a lot of being an artist is just like that in general. It's like trying to just figure out your bullshit in your head. It's like a lot, like only like 50% of being an artist, or even less at this point, because so much of it is about like shows and shit like that. Is actually about even writing music. You know, like I think a lot of it is about like, adjusting your mind state to be like healthy, because it's really easy as an artist to get like mentally sick. I feel like
Oh yeah,
in
I've
like
definitely
different
seen
ways.
that. Absolutely. I mean, I think that that's a really important thing to touch on. Like a lot of artists I know, and I know like I myself also deal with like mental health issues and kind of a lot of like mindset kind of shifting experiences. Like, what would you say are like your biggest like help points or the things that helped you the most in kind of dealing with all of these kind of issues that other artists make or other artists encounter, I should say, that make it harder for them to finish work or make it harder for them to kind of sustain themselves through the songwriting process?
Um, like my best tip I reckon is to like don't like I think moving my studio to like a different spot that's not my house was a big help. Because I feel like one thing that's really easy as an electronic music producer, if your bedroom is also your studio, is to just get stuck in working constantly. And if you never take a step away from it, it's really easy to just like get stuck and never get out of that rut. Whereas I feel like being able to walk away from the studio every day for me is like a huge help, and being able to just like process, you know, my work in my head a little bit. I think there was like a study. I watched a TED talk, and they took like two groups, and they got one group who I think it might have been three groups. They got three groups, and one group played basketball every day. Another group didn't play basketball every day or think about playing basketball every day, and then the other group just thought about playing basketball every day. Like they didn't actually play it; they were just think about it in their head.
Mm-hmm.
And and the people who just thought about it in their head were like doing as good as the people who are actually practicing every day,
Oh
like physically
yeah.
practicing. And in some cases, I think they might have even done better. So I think like being able to walk away from your studio and just think about shit a little bit, like rather than actually do it, just kind of like stand back and think a bit more. It can be pretty helpful. I think a lot of people don't do that enough. Like they just try and work too hard or something.
Absolutely. I mean, kind of in that same vein, like I have noticed for myself, just from personal experience, like I've started over the past like 8 months, pretty much since a little bit before I moved to Los Angeles. I've been going for like a daily jog, like every single morning without fail. Get my shorts on, get my shoes and socks on, go out for 30 to 60 minutes and just kind of walk, listen to my own music, listen to other music, kind of like take in all the things that I see as I'm kind of walking around. And I really have found that I make the most advancements in how I want my songs to sound when I'm not able to look at my DAW, when I'm not able to touch anything, when I am forced to only listen to the music and think about it. Have you
Yeah,
had any of
totally.
that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like taking away because actually like using the software to write music is like a distraction in itself. Just you have to like click on shit and like think about other shit that's not like really music related. It's sort of like computer related. Um, so yeah, it is important, I think, to remove that distraction, and a good way to do that is to literally just walk away from it and just think about it somewhere else. But also going outside is super fucking good for your brain as well, and like you know, getting sunlight and shit like that. A lot of producers, and especially like me back in the day, don't do that. Like they stay in their studio and just fucking get what I call studio rot, where you just your brain turns into mush and like you're not getting any sunlight and you're just ordering fucking Uber Eats all the time and
Yeah.
and yeah, it can it can definitely get pretty stale. So I think like you're doing a disservice to yourself as an artist to not go outside and experience all that shit.
Absolutely. I mean, well, it kind of it gives us, and we can kind of wrap this section up and go kind of to the last ones after this. But I just think that this actually kind of relates back to what we talked about at the beginning, where you were talking about like how it's not even necessarily music that inspires you to create music, but it's your experiences that inspire you to create music. It's kind of the things that you've encountered, and how, you know, if you don't have enough input, if you don't have enough stuff flowing into your mind, into your body through like listening to other tracks or going out and doing things, going to festivals, or even just going for like a hike or a jog or something, it seems like it makes it harder for you to write good music because you don't have that kind of experiential aspect of it, kind of connecting with the music.
Well, yeah, I mean, all humans are input output systems on like a bunch of different levels, right? Like you can be an input, like you could think about yourself as like an input output system that converts Uber Eats into bangers, right? Like,
Exactly.
that's one way to think about it. Or you know, you could think about yourself. The way I think about it is, I'm an input output system that converts like a variety of different shit into banger.
Bangers. Well, can you actually, before we move on, can you tell us about where that came from?
Yeah. So I was just sitting on Twitch, not Twitch, Discord, in voice chat at like 2 a.m. one night, making the Sub Doctor collab from the new EP, and I don't know. I think I was drunk, or I might have been. I don't know. I was just sitting there and I was just being a fucking idiot. And there was like 5 people in the voice chat with me, and we are all just like chatting, and I was just writing tunes and shit. I don't know. Somewhere along the line, it just started coming up. It was just like we just all kept saying to each other, "Oh fuck you, I make banger," and then like I just like make a thing, and then somebody else would be like, "Oh no, fuck you, I make banger," and then they'd like make a heavier banger or whatever, and so it was just like some stupid Discord shit.
The inside jokes are always the best ones, in my opinion.
Yeah. I'm trying to get it started. I'm trying to meme it so everybody's like into it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, going back to the other thing, yeah, I definitely think that you need like to have input to have output, and you know, if you just sit in a room and the only input you have is like the internet, I think you'll run out of ideas pretty quick, or like you'll run out of inspiration or something. I don't fully understand it. I feel like this is an area of science that just is not a thing we understand, right? Like we don't understand where thoughts come from. That's the thing that we don't get, right?
Yeah, we get like a little bit of, you know, like biological information in terms of like, you know, synapses firing off and little cells running around. Oops, sorry about that. Running around our brain. But like in terms of like almost like the metaphysics of it, like we don't know. Or at least if we do know, it has not been published in a scientific journal in a way that a news reporter can write a pithy article about it.
Yeah, totally. So in that sense, if we don't know where thoughts come from, then we don't really know how music is made, actually. We know like technically how it's made, but we don't really know where it comes from like mentally.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a whole deep subject, and I'm sure that people are looking to get into the question. So I wanna kind of keep advancing forwards if possible, and just kind of just do a little bit of follow up as far as kind of like your workflow process. So like.
Wait, someone in the chat is saying they write music in a shed and they call it the shred shed.
Yeah, that's Rafter. Rafter. If you ever watch his streams, he does in fact produce from a shed. It's pretty chill. I mean, if there was ever a more appropriate home studio, I don't think I could find one.
Damn, you got a hydration bot?
I do. Yeah, I got to make sure I get my liquids in right here.
Yeah,
but do you
liquids out?
Exactly. Input output. So do you have any little last minute tips, techniques, any words of advice that you kind of want to kind of share with people that you might not have gotten a chance to talk about before now?
Yeah, go give me money at my website. That's my advice. No, I don't know. Just log hours in the studio, but also log hours in not the studio. And I don't know. I'm probably a terrible person to give life advice, honestly. I'm doing all right, but I want to give people life advice, just in case like they come back to me, they're like, "Hey, you told me to do this, and now I've got no arms." Yeah,
Yeah.
whoops.
That's it.
You
That's an
told me to
interesting
go
question.
outside, and I hurt myself.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, I mean, I guess we can kind of touch on something that I think might be a little contentious. And we talked about it a little bit at the beginning. What do you think about DAWs besides the one that you work in? Like, have you ever used more than one DAW? Are there any DAWs that you think are, for you better than others in terms of how you work? Like, what's your opinion on the current field of workstations?
Yeah. So I use two, Bitwig and Ableton, and I like both. I think they're both good. They're both pretty much the same. I haven't really used like enough of. I've used Cubase a little bit. Like I think I produced maybe 4 or 5 tracks in Cubase, and I produced like maybe 4 or 5 tracks in Logic, and I've produced a couple of tunes in Fruity Loops with Circuit Bent. And I think like door wise, it doesn't matter what you use as long as you know it really well. Um, and the way that you're probably going to get to know it really well is just by having a lot of people surrounding you that also use it, so you can kind of bounce ideas off them.
Absolutely. I mean,
Um,
does that impact you as well? Like, kind of the DAW that, like, let's say for example, like a collaboration partner is using. Has that ever influenced you?
well, yeah. These days, mostly everyone's using Ableton. I feel like so it's um collaboration partner wise, mostly it's Ableton. But yeah, if somebody else is using some other shit in their studio and I'm in their studio, I'll use it for sure. Like, I mean, if I go to a studio and it's running Cubase, I'll use Cubase.
Yeah. Are there any DAWs you don't like? Like, are you not a fan of like Pro Tools or Reaper or whatever?
I love Reaper. I'm not a huge fan of Pro Tools, but only just because I'm not. I don't think it's bad. I mean, it is bad. Like, it's bad at MIDI. It's really fucking bad at MIDI. It's like
Yeah.
pretty terrible at like automation and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
But and it only what supports RTAS or whatever.
Now it's AAX.
AAX, yeah, stupid fucking thing.
I know, proprietary formats.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But I hate it for those kind of reasons, for the proprietary bullshit. Like, you need an M box to run it, and like, all that kind of stuff. But I also hate that it's got this like legacy shit behind it, where like you need to use it to get into the cool kid clubs to like work in the big studios. To me, that pisses me off.
Oh yeah. I mean, I definitely have been told by people, like, if you want to get a job in LA, it's better to get a Pro Tools certification and start working at a studio than it is to like write your own music.
Well, yeah, I suppose.
But that's no fun.
No, yeah, exactly. Fuck that.
What do you? I mean, and people are kind of talking about it in the chat. Like, what do you? We talked about it a little bit. What do you think about Pro Tools? Like, especially like or not Pro Tools, Fruity Loops. What do you think about the new FL Studio?
I haven't used it. I have a license for it, but the last Fruity Loops I used was version 20. Is that what it is now?
Yeah,
20?
FL20. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I mean, I like it. To me, it's just like so different from every other DAW, because you like attach clips to a mixer and shit, rather than like there's no real channel based system, which is kind of cool. It's like more modular, but it's also just, I don't know, I find it difficult to use to some
Yeah.
degree.
The navigation is definitely not one that is typical compared with other DAWs. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you can like get used to Ableton and then move to like Logic or Cubase or Pro Tools or anything like Bitwig and be like, oh yeah, this is all kind of similar. But if you go to FL, it's like a whole different fucking game that makes no sense.
Yeah.
It just works in its own like way. Which is cool. I like that people do that shit where they make programs that run in like completely different fashions and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just confusing as like a person who's come from more traditional DAWs like Logic and Cubase and Ableton.
Yeah. Well, Noise Signal is curious. What do you like about Reaper?
Oh, I love the fact that Reaper is so customizable. So like for instance, there's a thing in it called spectral peaks, like where you can set like certain parts of the waveform based on frequency and transient to be like different colors, and I think Ableton needs that.
Oh, I didn't know you could do
I
that.
also like the fact that it has completely customizable key commands, which actually almost every other DAW has except Ableton. Um, what else do I like about it? Yeah, I like the fact that you can skin it. Like you can put different skins on Reaper and make it look however you want. And I like the fact that you can basically move shit around to behave however you want too. So you could pretty much get Reaper to behave almost exactly like Ableton with customizable key commands and skins.
Oh, that's interesting. I've only like scratched the surface of Reaper, but I had a lot of fun with it. It was a bit I will say it was a bit daunting at first because like it's kind of like Reason in that you can and it kind of makes you route a lot of the stuff, at least the first time. But it was definitely a new experience when I was messing with it. So I think that's interesting to hear what you like about
Yeah,
it.
you can't open it and then like straight out of the box just go for it. You really have to like do a day of setup with it, and then once it's set up, like you can. That's kind of what I like about it is it's so set upable. Like there's so much you can do to it to like customize it, and there's not a lot you can do in Ableton, with in that regard. You know, like what can you can change like the zoom display, and you can change like the color, and that's it.
Yeah.
And you can change where your VST folder is.
Exactly. It's not
Like
not a
that's
lot of it's kind of like Apple products in that sense where it's like they work really well if you do it the way they want you to.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Yeah. So long as you like do it exactly that way.
Yeah. So I guess we can wrap up with a couple of kind of final questions, and then we can focus in on like viewer Q&A. Like I know the Whittler actually sent me a couple of questions that he was curious about involving your film score, which we can get into at the start of the Q&A. But I did kind of want to do two quick questions. Like one, like, do you have any tips as far as like marketing, branding, like having a career in music? I saw a question from Rafter, which is like, what do you think is more influential in helping you break out of obscurity? Do you think it's consistency or your social media brand? So kind of if you could combine those two things together, we could kind of start with that.
um, what do I think is better for getting successful? Social media brand or consistency?
Yeah, consistently in your releases, like constantly putting out tracks or marketing those tracks.
If I had to pick one of the two, I would probably guess marketing those tracks because I've seen people with like one track who are huge, you know. And then I've also seen people with like 400 tracks that aren't very big.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would guess like if you had to pick one of the two, then probably that. But I mean, obviously, you kind of want to do both, right? You don't want to just like do one or the other. It'd be nice to be consistent and really good at marketing. I think like there's like a few pillars to being super successful in the music industry. I think your team has a lot to do with it, like your manager, your agent, your PR team, your you know, just who you work with. I think has a lot to do with it. Like the kind of promoters you're playing shows for, stuff like that. Um, I think being a really fucking good DJ and a really good performer helps a
Mm-hmm.
lot. Like if you're, you know, if you've only got one track, but you're really, really fucking good at putting sets together and you're really good at performing and like you're pretty hypey and people really like your personality and shit, that helps. Your personality is a big one. Like if you're a really like lovable, relatable personality and you like inject a lot of that shit into like social media via like Instagram stories or something like that, I think that's pretty helpful. Uh, yeah, your social media is super important for sure these days. It seems like obviously your branding, like your artwork, your whole image and brand, and like your name and all that kind of shit. And obviously like how good your music is and how good of a producer you are is pretty important too. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's like a bunch of things I think that all contribute to being successful these days. And I kind of don't like, I mean, I get it, I understand it, but I wish that it was just based off production skill. Like that seems like it would be the coolest and the most beneficial because then everybody would be like, oh shit, I actually have to like get good at this to be successful.
Absolutely. I mean, well, kind of with that, like dovetailing off of that, like, what do you think about the state of the music industry right now?
Oh, bro, sick dovetail. Um, the state of the music industry right now. Um, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I like it. I think like at this point, electronic music has gotten so big that it's really beneficial for me and you and like anybody else who's doing electronic music now. It's like a fucking huge industry now. Definitely when I got into it in like the early days, I think my first album was 2008.
Hmm.
Everyone thought it was just the weirdest shit. They're like, "What's this stupid fucking Mario music?" And it's like, like nobody really. I mean, there was dubstep and shit happening back then too, but it was not like it is now. You know, like artists like Casper and Rusko and all that shit. They were like, on the scene and like doing shows and all of that stuff. But it's not nothing like it is now. Like Rusko now is like playing all these giant festivals to like 10,000 people and shit. Back then it was like small clubs, like 100 people, if that. Like,
Yeah, more
and
about the DJing than about the artist almost.
um,
Or do you think it
well,
was still?
yeah, but well, no, I mean it was still about the artist, but like it was just way smaller. Like there was just a lot less people who were into it. Now there's just such a huge amount of people into it that it's sort of like the biggest thing at the moment. It's sort of like bigger than bands and shit now, and um, yeah, I don't know. Like I really like the fact that that electronic music is so big now. I think it's really helpful because I'm a pretty obscure experimental electronic musician, right? So if the more commercial people can do like 10, 20, 30,000 person shows, then that means I can do like 1 to 300 person shows, which is good because like back in the day, these bigger artists who would be considered commercial now were only able to do like 300 person shows, which meant that me as an experimental artist could only do like shows to 20 people because it was just not big enough and there wasn't enough people into the crazy shit. I also think that electronic music right now is kind of in like a 80s hair metal phase or whatever.
Yeah, I've
Like
noticed that. Yeah.
you know how like back in the day there was like all that kind of like 80s hair metal shit, and then 10 years later everyone was like, what the fuck were we thinking, that was so stupid, and like started getting into more like actual like solidly written music and solidly played music and stuff like that. Not that 80s hair metal was not solidly written or whatever, but I feel like electronic music is currently like in that sort of phase. And in 10 years, we're going to look back at this time and be like, wow, that was, remember all that shit? Like,
Yeah. Remember all the people wearing masks and jumping around on the DJ table?
yeah, yeah, totally.
Awesome. Well, so like, kind of with that, like, what are you doing next? Like, what do you have in the works that you want to share with us? Because I know there's some things that you want to keep under wraps. There's some things that you can't talk about. So, like, as far as what you can touch on, like, what's next? Obviously, you have the EP coming out next week. What's after that?
Yeah, so there's an EP next week, and then I want to finish this other EP with Mersive and get that out in a few weeks, and then I'm gonna do a tour with Mersive, so it's like 6 shows or something. In the fall, and then I have a couple other shows. I have one or two with Dylan Ill Gates. One is in Atlanta, and one is somewhere else. And then I have a Kill Bill show at Cervantes in October with Frequent and Craftal. And then I think I'm just going to take most of October off. And then November, I'm looking to do some shit in Asia and Australia. So I think I'm going to do Taiwan, India, and then Australia. And then December, I'm pretty much going to take off, I think.
Oh, that's smart. Yeah, I mean, I feel like taking breaks is important because you can kind of see like a lot of. I've been noticing a bunch of artists on Twitter being like, I have to I have to cancel the rest of my tour because I'm so emotionally drained and so exhausted that like I think my doctors are saying if I keep touring, I'm gonna kill myself. Like I'm gonna get
Yeah.
sick, and that's basically
That's like
what happened to
pretty.
Avicii.
Yeah, that's like fringe cases. That doesn't seem to happen too often. I
Okay.
mean, Gedda canceled his tour because he fucking was getting booed off stage every show because he wasn't playing bangers or whatever. um, yeah, so when I say take time off, I don't necessarily mean like I'm gonna just sit at home and do nothing. Like I'm gonna be in the studio and probably just like lightly working on music, but I'm not going to be like hammering it. I'm pretty much going to hammer it for the rest of this month. And well, there's only like one day left of this month. Um, yeah, I'm going to like hammer it really hard in September, just lightly work on shit in October, hammer it really hard in November, and then lightly do shit again in December. So it's kind of like, yeah, I'm doing like 1 month of heavy work of just like writing a lot and touring a lot, and then 1 month of just more or less studio work.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
But yeah, that it's tricky, man. Like when you get offers coming in and you like see it all on paper, you're like, oh, this looks great on paper. Like, yeah, I could do this show, this show. Like, oh, this route looks fucking crazy tight, and like
Mhm.
that's gonna be sick. But then once you actually get on the road, you're like, why did I agree to this? This is so much fucking travel. And
Oh man, yeah. I bet the travel is like almost more exhausting than the shows.
oh, it's way more exhausting than the shows. The shows are like, I mean, DJing's fun, and you're just standing on stage, usually just having a good time playing tunes. Um, the travel is terrible. It's like, especially for me, I'm pretty tall, so I'm always like crunching up into shitty fucking seats on airplanes and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, that's
And
the grind.
the sleep situation sucks too. Like you get like a couple hours sleep a night or whatever. It's not enough, and then you start getting grumpy.
Oh yeah, the tour sleep schedule. I mean, have you found yourself able to like, do anything to get your sleep schedule like adjusted while you're on the road, or is it just like a constant hassle?
It's not really a matter of like getting it adjusted. It's a matter of just not having time because like you'll play the show at night. You get to the show at what, like midnight or something. Play at like 12:30. Finish playing at 2. Get back to the hotel by 2:30. Usually I won't just like get back to the hotel and fall asleep instantly because I'm not a fucking psychopath who can just go to sleep instantly. But like like I'll spend like 30 minutes looking at my phone or something, and eventually I'll pass out, and then it's like I have to wake up again at like 8 a.m. to go catch another flight to the next city or something. So you get like 4 or 5 hours sleep a night, and that just accumulates as like a sleep debt over a series of shows if you're doing like a solid run of shows.
Hmm.
But I'm pretty careful these days to not like do shows that are going to do that to me. Like if I get 2 offers and one of them is in like say LA and then the next night is in Montreal, I'd be like, nah, let's maybe like move the Montreal thing to like another date because that's not going to make sense. And you're going to go through like a ton of time zones and just
Completely fuck your circadian rhythm up.
yeah, and also like logistically to get to Montreal and like I've done that before. I played a show in LA and then a show the next night in Montreal, and logistically it's just ridiculous to do because you literally have to basically like once you finish playing in LA, go straight to the airport and start traveling to Montreal to make it in time just for the next show. It's like a whole travel day sort of.
Oh yeah, that's gotta take its toll.
Yeah, so you can get like smarter about it and like route shit properly. Like this fall I'm just doing like really carefully paired shows that are next to each other basically. So I'm doing like September I think 21st and 22nd or 22nd and 23rd, I'm not sure. I'm doing like Berkeley, California and then Santa Cruz. And then the next weekend I'm doing Eugene and Portland. And the next weekend I'm doing Seattle and Denver. And then so it's kind of like each weekend is like 2 shows, but they're kind of not that far away from each other. They're all sort of like in similar time zones and only like at most an hour or 2 flight from one another.
Yeah, like from the sounds of it, like the longest bit of travel in a weekend is going to be like Seattle to Denver, which is not really that
Yeah,
bad. It's like what,
that's not that bad.
2 hour flight tops.
Yeah, it's like 2 hours or something.
Yeah, I mean that's smart. Like making sure that you're taking care of your body while you're touring seems really important. But
Yeah.
I guess if you're down for it, we can take a couple of questions from chat. Like I said, I have a couple of questions from Whittler. We have a question from Kagan Music, and then we got a question from Alexis, the Silent Science, good friend.
Yeah. What ended up happening with the seizure? Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
we'll start with that one.
So, all right. So pretty much, I went to Hawaii. So I flew from Denver to Hawaii. That's like an 8-hour flight. Landed in Hawaii and found out that my roommate was like freaking out. As like this girl that me and my ex-girlfriend were living with, and she was just fucking freaking out and like saying she was gonna like destroy my shit for some fucking reason. And she just like moved to Denver from LA and like just needed a spot to stay. So we were like helping her with a spot to stay, and then she like kind of had this fucking emotional flip out for some reason. I don't actually even know why. And then so I was in Hawaii. I started freaking out, and I was like, "Fuck! I don't want to like leave this person at my house with my studio and stuff." So I flew back from like I didn't even sleep. Like I literally landed in Hawaii, and all this shit just blew up. And then I got another flight from Hawaii back to Denver. So,
Oh
so
shit.
just instantly flew back, and then spent 3 days straight with basically no sleep, packing all of my shit in the house into a truck, and then driving it to a storage unit, and then just put it all in a storage unit. So like she couldn't fuck with my shit. And then so I did that was like a couple of days. I didn't really get much sleep. Then had like a shitty sleep, and then had to get back on the plane and fly to Australia. And then because I had some shows in Australia, so that was like a 24-hour flight. I didn't really get much sleep on those flights either because I find it tough to sleep on planes.
Hmm.
And then landed in Australia. I think I did one show, and then I like went to a bar with a friend of mine, and we were just gonna like have a beer. And I like sat down, went to like start drinking this beer. I got like halfway through the beer, and I was like, "Fuck, I really don't feel good. I feel like real queasy and fucked." And then I just woke up in a puddle of piss, and they were
Oh
like, "Yeah, you
shit.
just had a seizure." And I was like, "Fuck." And then I went to like get an MRI, and I went to get a CAT scan and all this sort of shit. And the doctor was like, I don't think you had a seizure actually. He's like, I think you just passed out because you weren't like sleeping enough, and you were just like driving your body too hard and whatnot. Um, so I don't actually even think it was a seizure according to like a neurologist that I talked to. But he was just like, you still shouldn't drive for like a month, and you should just look after yourself better.
I mean, well, I'm glad that that all worked out overall. I know that we were all kind of worried when we were first talking about it.
Yeah, it was kind of scary, man. Having a seizure is weird. It's basically like similar to DMT, I would say. You just kind of like have this crazy like experience, and then you wake up like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah, I mean, I had a roommate who was having epileptic seizures, and that stuff is intense for all parties involved.
Yeah, it's no good.
But
The main thing that like
Mhm.
fucked me though with that seizure is I like fell backwards and bent my knee real bad, and
Oof,
it fucked my knee up for like 6 months or something. So I was kind of like limping around for about 6 months,
that
but it's good
sucks.
now. It like somehow healed itself.
Yeah, I mean the body is good at repairing itself in many ways. But we can move on to a somewhat lighter lighter subject.
All right.
So the Whittler has a couple of questions. I'm going to read them off, and then I'm going to also paste them for you so you can kind of have a reference for them. And again, these are in regards to your film score for Mom and Dad. The first one is, in the first few minutes of the soundtrack, was the sound being out of tune a conscious decision? How to come about, if so? The second one is, how much of this was made directly to the image, and how much was made freeform and then layered over the image? I'm assuming the actual movie cut. The third one is, was adding words or any vocals a conscious choice, or was that something that the studio is asking for? And then the last one is, any tips for people wanting to get into music for visual media, movies, TV, games, and stuff like that?
Yeah. All right. So in the first few minutes, the soundtrack being out of tune was a conscious decision. Yes. And the reason why is because the director said that he wanted the shit to sound like John Carpenter's Goblins or whatever it was. Or I don't know. He sent me like some John Carpenter shit, and he was
Mhm.
like, "Oh, I want it to sound like this," and I was like, "Oh, cool." So you want it to basically sound like modular synth stuff that sounds all fucked and out of tune. And he was like, "Yep, exactly." So like so I just made a bunch of stuff on my Mother 32 and my DPO, and just kind of tuned it by ear, so it didn't really sound perfect. It just sounded like kind of tuned. So that was definitely a conscious decision. And I think
Mhm.
that kind of stuff, it just gives shit like an older like VCR kind of vibe.
Oh yeah, kind of like,
Yeah,
it's
like
almost like Boards of Canada sounds.
yeah, totally like that whole VHS tape kind of thing where shit's just a little bit bent. And the whole movie is about like parents who are really cracked in the head and want to kill their kids, and like there's like this huge epidemic that's just sweeping over, I think, the world, or the United States at least, where parents just all of a sudden snap one day and want to kill all their children. So it's like I don't know, just having it be out of tune, it kind of gives it this like somewhere middle America vibe that's like shit's about to go south or something. So yeah, that was definitely a very conscious decision. How much was made directly to the image and how much was freeform and laid over the image? Probably like half and half. So throughout the entire project, I wrote a few hundred tracks. I think it was somewhere in the range of like 100 and 200 tracks that I wrote, and only about 40 of them ended up being used specifically for the film. So I think maybe about out of that 40, 20 of them were written specifically for the scenes, and then maybe 20 were just like little riffs and shit that I made that kind of ended up getting chucked over the scenes in the end by the editors, and then the director was like, "Yeah, that's great, that works." Adding words or vocals. So I think it's towards the end of the movie when the parents start getting really crazy. I started like what I would do is I would say some shit into my microphone. I think I was like I think I just said "come to mummy" in the microphone, and then I like vocoded it a ton and like distorted it a ton, so you get this vocal that's just like "come to mommy," and it's like all
Nice.
fucked. And like, here, let me see if I can find it. Um,
Is it on the album?
yeah, it's on the album.
Which track do you remember? I can play it for the audience.
Yeah, hold on, let me find it real quick.
Take your time.
But yeah, adding that "come to mummy" shit was definitely also like a very conscious decision that I made because I want. I mean, I'm a huge Aphex Twin fan. I love the song "Come to Daddy," so I wanted to like just do something sort of opposed to that as well. But also, which one is it? Is it this one?
Is it Daddy's War Cry or Robotic Mother, maybe?
Oh, it's called "Come to Mummy." It's like
Oh, I see it now, yeah. I'm gonna play it right now on stream.
yeah, so you'll hear these like glitched out things like there'll be like an exponential rhythm and then like a big industrial hit, and on the industrial hit it just says "Come to Mummy," but it's all fucked up and granulized and stuff like that.
Do you have a timestamp, or should I just kind of play through the soundtrack?
If you just play through that one song, you'll hear it pretty quick. Like
okay, for sure. Let's give it a listen.
Yeah, and there's like a right before it says "Come to Mummy," it says "Stop touching me, mum" as well. There's like these big like artifacted like stretch out things. It's like "Stop touching me, mom," but it's like all fucking stretched and whack. So yeah, all of that was like super intentional. I just wanted to make it all really fucked, and like the whole thing I wanted to just be dark and weird. And that's exactly what the director wanted to, so it worked out pretty well. And the tips for people getting into this thing, I have no idea how to get into. Literally, what happened was the director wanted to do like a John Carpenter thing, and he wanted to score the movie himself. So he hit me. He started watching tutorials on the internet, and he just found my tutorials, and then he was just like, "Actually, you know what? Fuck it, I'm just gonna get this guy to do it." But he'd already, I think, heard of my work before that, so I think it was just it was like a good fit. Originally, I think he asked Kill the Noise to do it, so I was kind of up against Kill the Noise, and then I ended up getting the job because I guess Kill the Noise didn't want to do it for the however much money they were offering him because he just makes so much money playing shows.
Oh yeah, I mean that makes sense. I mean, I can see where they're going from, but I feel like the way that you approach it is like it fits more with the aesthetic. But I mean, not to diss Jake at all, but I just feel like the way that you approach sound design, I feel like it fits the mood of the picture a lot more.
Yeah, I think it was a good fit in the end, like using my sort of glitchy, granular type sounds and, my weirder, like, distorted industrial stuff that I do sometimes, I think worked pretty well. I don't know what Jake would have done. I would have been really interested to hear like what it would have sounded like if he scored this film instead of me. But yeah, I can't imagine it being any other way at this point. It's like the film has kind of like a personality because of the soundtrack now, which is sick. Like I love that I had that much to do with it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
And I
it's
also
cool.
like I was just gonna say as well. I also think it's like I feel really proud that I like scored an entire Hollywood film like by myself. You know, it's like a big feat. You know, like Hans Zimmer doesn't even do that shit. He like has a whole team of people helping him.
Oh yeah, he does the
So
he does the note picking. Everyone else does the actual work.
yeah,
No shade.
exactly. Yeah, he just kind of like it sounds like you're throwing shade, dude.
Maybe.
Yeah, he has like a whole system where yeah, he'll sort of be at the top making like executive decisions, but really a lot of it comes down to his minions who do his bidding. But yeah, so I'm kind of proud that like I was able to, you know, accomplish that as well as accomplish like a full length album in the same.
Yeah, that's fucking sick.
Oh, that's awesome. Weirdly saying he listens to the soundtrack once a week. That's that's so sick.
I bet. Yeah.
I haven't actually really listened to it since it came out. I didn't think it would be a thing that people would just listen to because it's mostly like ambient noise and synth stuff and just like it's not really like, for lack of a better word, music, you know? It's kind of
Yeah.
just like
It's like a soundscape.
yeah, it's like soundscapey and like sound designy and shit, which is cool. I mean, I like it. And I'm super fucking proud that we ended up getting it released on Mousetrap. I think that's so funny.
Yeah, that's cool. I was surprised by that, but I mean, it works. Like I think it fits the mousetrap aesthetic, and it also like it creates kind of this broader kind of context for electronic music in general. I feel like.
Yeah, I think that they released it like to gain cool points because I feel like they were releasing like at the time a lot of really cheesy techno stuff, and I think they wanted to like redeem themselves a little bit. So I think that's why they're.
Oh yeah. Um, Well, I guess if anyone else has any questions, feel free to drop it in chat, and we can, if not, we can kind of maybe round off with this question from Kagan. Do you have any tips about maintaining such an insane output in terms of volume? I guess I'm referring to like your body of work. As someone struggling with coming up with ideas combined with the complexity of my projects, 12 songs a year is pushing it already. Combine that with periods of productivity, uncertainty, etc. More than a couple releases a year is very hard for me. How do you maintain your productivity and output, or any tips and tricks, for example, fixed schedules, etc., as far as finishing your music and getting stuff out there?
Yeah. So in terms of like fixed schedules and stuff like that, I'm pretty good at like forcing myself to go to the studio. I'm pretty good at just like making myself get up and come here. Um, and if that to you is like just getting out of your bed and going into the next room because that's where you write music, or if it's even in the same room and it's just a matter of like setting your laptop on a table and getting to work. I mean, I think it's important to just like get up, spend at least a couple hours on writing music. If it's not happening for you that day, then just go do something else. But I mean, you got to like show up, you know, you got to do the thing. So I always try and do that. 12 songs a year though, I don't even think is like problematic. I think 12 songs a year is good. Like that's an album a year, man. Solid. Uh, Periods of unproductivity and uncertainty. I mean, I definitely have those too, but I think that yeah, I don't know. I would say if you're doing 12 tracks a year, that's pretty good. If they're like all really killer tracks, that's solid. I think another thing that I've been getting over a lot more in the last few years is, you know, when you have like 20 or 30 tracks sitting on your hard drive and you're sort of like, oh, I don't want to start anymore because I got to finish all these first. I kind of don't like that idea. And what I'll usually do is if a track's been sitting on my hard drive or whatever longer than a few months, I'll just be like, all right, that's not a thing. I'll just start a bunch of new shit. And I feel like because I just start a lot of new shit, I'll much more frequently come across stuff that I'm really stoked about and really interested in actually working on. And then that'll help me like get a lot of stuff finished because I'm working on stuff that I actually give a shit about rather than just trying to force myself to work on shit just because I started it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, like I've personally and I'm gonna let you know I'm gonna try and change the Discord call region because I'm hearing a little bit of audio clicks. But like one thing that I've found is there's almost like a balancing act between like starting new projects and finishing old ones because like you can both get kind of stuck from what I've seen and from what I've experienced, like stuck kind of working on like one song and then you only have that one song and then you end up losing your kind of way because the track becomes almost like just too self-referential. And then in the opposite end of things, you have like a lot of kind of new ideas, but nothing ever gets done, if that makes sense. Do you find yourself dealing with that, or is it just kind of like you have a process for kind of filtering that?
Um, Wait, sorry, what was the question?
Oh, sorry, that might be a bit confusing. Well, I mean, like, how do you deal with kind of like the balance of working on old projects and making sure they're done, and like making new projects without getting lost and like creating 40 demos and not finishing a single one of them?
I think creating 40 demos is a good idea. And generally what I'll do is if I have a ton of demos, like I'll sort of look through all the projects and I'll find the similar BPMs and the similar keys and stuff like that. And then I'll quite often just mash the projects together. And that's why like a lot of my tracks, like especially on Apophenia, you see it called like Composite 4 and Composite 12 and shit like that. It's just like a bunch of shit that I mashed together and just called it a composite file.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Well, I think unless there's anything else you wanted to say, any other little last little tidbits. Um,
Yeah, I got a question. How did you get a fucking sub button? I want a sub button.
so for me, the subscriber button came from like streaming like every day for a month. And as soon as I hit the requirements for affiliate, I was like, hey, make me an affiliate, please. And then a week later, they were like, sure, why not? You are an affiliate now.
Dude, I have tried to apply for affiliate so many times, and they say no every time.
That makes no sense. I mean, I would say if there's anyone better than me to ask about this, it would probably be like the Whittler
The
because
Whittler,
he's
yeah,
partnered.
I've talked to him a bunch about it, and yeah, he's like, yeah, do affiliate, and it hasn't happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like Owsley is saying in the chat. Like, Twitch wants people to stream like it's their day job, essentially. And once you've gotten the affiliate, it's a bit easier. But like, it is kind of just like you gotta do it for, I'd say, like 3 weeks straight. Not necessarily every day, but at least like 3 to 4 days a week. You got to be streaming for a couple of hours, and you generally have more than enough concurrent viewers to apply for affiliate. So if you can
Yeah,
do
you have
that,
to
you're
have
fine.
500 broadcast minutes. I have way more than that. 7 unique broadcast days. I have fucking 100, and an average of 3 or more concurrent viewers. I usually have like 70 to 100 viewers, and you need 50 followers. I have like almost 5,500. So it's
Yeah.
like I should be good, but yeah, I don't know. This fucking every time, I don't know. I think they hate me. I think they're racist.
I mean, I don't know. Twitch is a weird fucking company. Jeff Bezos has ownership of it, and that might influence things, but I don't think so.
What? I didn't know. Is that a really?
Yeah, Amazon owns Twitch. Yeah, that's why you have the whole Twitch Prime thing where you can connect your Amazon Prime to your Twitch account and then get a free sub per month. But yeah, I mean, I'm surprised if you're hitting all of the benchmarks within a 30-day period, that should be more than enough.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try again right now, but I have definitely done this. Wait, affiliate onboarding, manage or modify your payment information. Wait, maybe I am already an affiliate. Did this
Oh.
get accepted and I didn't realize?
Well, there we found out. Yeah. But yeah. I mean, is there anything else you wanted to talk about? Any other, I guess, questions from me, or any questions from the chat, or do you wanna take off? It's up to you.
I'm just here doing my affiliate stuff, so I'm down to more questions. All right,
Yeah.
by clicking the button, you agree to the Twitch affiliate agreement. Dude, fuck, I think this actually happened. I just
There we
think I
go.
have to fill out some back end stuff. Begin royalty tax interview.
There
All
you
right.
go. Yeah, you got all that. Well, Owsley is asking, what labels should they apply for with weird ass bubble IDM stuff? He sent this stuff to you, but you said it was good, but not what you were looking for Belegal Beats.
Oh, where should he send his bubbly IDM shit? Fuck, I don't know. Maybe Night Owl could be good. They seem like they're a pretty bubbly label, right?
Okay.
Kind of maybe it depends. I would have to listen to it. So pretty much the only shit that we're interested in on Belegal Beats is like really emotional, deep, glitchy IDM shit. So like old Access to Arasaka stuff, or like sort of like just the EPs that we've been releasing. You can kind of hear that it's like starting to develop a sound for the label.
Oh yeah, I mean like the Primo stuff, and then that newest release. Who is the newest one for?
The newest one was Cloud Cluster.
Yeah, that one was really nice.
Yeah, he's so fucking good. I love that guy's stuff.
Yeah.
Man, I really hope that that this affiliate thing works.
Yeah, I mean, I will say my stream is kind of starting to shit the bed. I think we're kind of hitting the point where streaming and running Discord and doing everything is starting to take its toll. But I mean, thank you so much for doing this with me, Bill. This was really fucking fun, and I feel like people really enjoyed it.
Is this number one?
Yeah, we are at the first episode of the as of yet unnamed artist interview series. I still haven't figured out a good name for it. But you are our flagship. You've led us all off onto the voyage.
Oh, my honor. Yeah, I'm doing a podcast now as well. Actually, it's called the Mr. Bill Podcast, and I'm gonna start getting it rolling out here pretty soon. The first episode was with Andrew Huang. Second one was with Ankle Pants. Third one was with Mersive, and then I did the fourth one yesterday with Vibe Squad.
Oh, that's fucking sick. When do you is it out already, or are you still trying to get the episodes recorded and edited and stuff?
Yeah, so I've recorded 4 episodes, but I think I'm going to start rolling them out pretty soon because, I think they sound pretty good at this point.
Nice. I can't wait to check that out. But yeah, I think that kind of does it for us. Thank you again, Bill. Love you, buddy. This was really, really cool.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I just got a sub. Thank you, Q Panda, for that Twitch Prime. I really appreciate it.
Pog.
Yeah, thank you to everyone who followed today. Azuki, LDW, Plato Moose, and Morrison. Thank you to everyone for hanging out. Please, everyone, go check out Mr. Bill. He also streams. I'm going to give him a shout out real quick. It's Mr. Bill's Tunes on Twitch. What are your other social media? Is it all Mr. Bill's Tunes, or are some of them Mr. Bill? Like, how can people find you if they are unfamiliar?
Yeah, it's Mr. Bill's Tunes everywhere. That's kind of why I picked Mr. Bill's Tunes, because I could get it everywhere. I think that's another thing that, like, we talked about the marketing thing earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it should be like, you should definitely try and get the same handle everywhere, so you can easily just tell somebody in conversation how to find you.
Exactly. I mean, that's definitely what I've been doing with Moose Arm Music. So it's definitely it's smart, and honestly, I'm surprised it doesn't happen more. But yeah, I guess that does it for everyone. I'm gonna drop the call now, do a little bit of wrap up in the stream, and then probably get out of here. So thank you again, Bill.
Yeah, fuck yeah, man. All right, have a good one.
All right, take care.
See ya.
Alrighty, so that does it. That was the stream. I apologize for some of the processing issues we've had near the end of it. I can see on my end we dropped a couple of frames there at the end, but looks like this was a blast. So thank you all so much for hanging out with me today. This was really fun. I had a blast doing this. And I'm going to do more of these. I can say that tomorrow we're going to have Carter. If you're in the Twitch music scene, I feel like at that point you have to know who Carter is. We're going to be doing more of these. I'll be reaching out to more people in the coming weeks to plan that out. But pretty much the entire month of September has been booked. I know that the Whittler has agreed to come on at some point, so he and I are going to have to go through this whole process. We've been going for about 3 hours. If anyone has any questions for me or anything that they want to talk about in terms of Theory Thursday, we can go in on that. Otherwise, I think I'm just going to find someone to raid and get out of here. So I'll give y'all a couple of seconds to kind of let chat catch up while I go find us someone to raid. Either way, I can tell my computer is really freaking out. Also, because my apartment is really hot right now. I don't think your channel is dying. Be tough, you plateau. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I think I'm sorry. My computer is having a bit of a problem. Oh no, absolutely. Everyone send some love to Bill, please. I'm gonna go turn on the Twitch. I'm gonna turn on my AC unit. Hopefully the AC will cool down my scalding hot laptop. You need to get sponsored by your shirt retailer. I mean, hey, if y'all want to go contact the Yeti and let them know that they can start sending me more shit, because I love like all of their daily designs, I would be happy to go through that. But yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything yet, but I'm pretty sure tonight I will be on Fantex's podcast. Can't say anything specific about that. Haven't heard more details, but I'm assuming it's going to be the same time, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Again, tomorrow for Freebie Friday, we'll be doing interview with Carter, and then after I'll do a couple of feedbacks. I know we're on a short feedback week. I apologize for that. Yeah, sorry. Computer is very, very slow right now, trying to handle all these things. Let's see, who can we raid? It looks like Keith is playing WoW. It looks like the music streamer we have is Medium Rare Bread. So let's go send Bread some love. Let me go get that raid button going. Play us Tritones for 14 hours. I'll play it for you for like a second, if that counts. There we go. There's a tritone just for you, noise signal. All right, everyone go say hi to Bread. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful week. See y'all maybe tonight for Fantex. Definitely tomorrow for the interview with Carter. I love y'all. Be safe. Take care of each other. And bye.